How often do you consciously challenge your own limits? Can you define your limits, or do you discover them only when pushed to the brink? Making a film while pregnant got me thinking about limits. I'm tempted to say it was the hardest thing I've ever done as a filmmaker, but there might have been other experiences that were harder. Also, I certainly can't say it was the hardest thing I've done while pregnant, because going through the first trimester was definitely tougher. I mean, it lasted 6 times as long as the shoot, or any film shoot I've been on for that matter. After an intense 12-day shoot, I was physically and mentally exhausted, as anyone would expect. But I was also anemic, and no, I was not missing my supplements. Okay, actually, maybe I missed a dose or two, but I know I would have missed so many more if my husband wasn't there to remind me to take them. But the funny thing is, it wasn't until several weeks after the shoot that I found out I was anemic. I thought my body just needed rest after an intense shoot, but my mom figured she figured that something was wrong, because she could tell over video calls that my lips were getting darker. And a few weeks later, I was looking at some photos from the shoot, and I realized that, wow, okay, my lips really were looking dark. So I guess I most likely became anemic sometime during the shoot. And to make matters worse, I got malaria a few days before we wrapped. And, that probably made it worse. I mean, those last few days, they were definitely the toughest. I was so beat. But, I mean, shout out to my crew and my leading lady, Uzamaka. They helped me stay afloat during those last days. Like, there were times when I would feel so dead. I would just get on the bed and just zone off for a couple of minutes while they got ready for the next scene. So after all of that, I was determined to rest. But then a week after the shoots, I had to jump right into working on the first cut of the film after the editor was done with his assembly. But then that's where I ran into more trouble. The hardware I had to work with, the laptop I was working with, it made editing a bit of a nightmare. So editing took a month longer than it should have, which is crazy in the world of filmmaking where you're working with tight deadlines and all of that. But there wasn't much I could do with the ridiculous amount of lagging that I had to deal with. Like, it was the most frustrating thing ever. We shot on Blackmagic cameras, and somehow I had no idea how heavy Blackmagic files could get. I mean, normally you would work with proxies, which are files that you create from the original files, but are much reduced in size, so that your software doesn't have so much issue processing the files. So normally I would work with proxies, and that would solve the problem. But I was using a laptop that couldn't handle even with proxies, the latest version of Premiere Pro, and then the heavy size of the files. So we were trying to solve that problem. The studio, I had a chat with them and their editor, and they suggested downgrading to an earlier version of Premiere Pro, which I did. But then I ran into issues converting the timeline to a version compatible with converting the project rather, to a version compatible with the earlier version of Premiere. I mean, I got my editor to do the conversion, but it just wasn't working. So, I had to push through working with the lag. If I wasn't so pregnant and exhausted at the time, I would have had no problem doing the long drive to the editor studio daily, every day, for the week or two it would have taken to complete the cut, even though I hate that long drive. But I would have done it, And, of course, with all this wahala, our delivery time was affected. It was a lot of suffering. 6 weeks of suffering. It was 6 weeks of suffering because I was ill, trying to get better, trying to recuperate, or I say recuperate, trying to just get better. But I had to drag myself to my editing desk every single day and work for hours with the lighting system. Crazy. Anyways, did I suffer so much because I didn't know my limits? Yeah. But knowing what I know now, I would have made a few different choices. But again, how would I have known what those limits were if I had never tested them? I mean, I definitely didn't expect my second pregnancy to be more challenging than my first, but that's exactly what happened. I was a complete mess in my first trimester and a near vegetable in my third. Like as close as you can get to a vegetable without actually being one. Maybe even a high functioning vegetable, considering that I was still working at that time. But thank God the timing of the project was perfect. I started pre-production about halfway through my second trimester and completed the shoots just for my third. The most beautiful thing about testing your limits is the lessons you learn along the way. I'm a better filmmaker now because I dared to make a film while going through a not so easy pregnancy. And if that wasn't hard enough, I also decided to co-produce, but I'm glad I did. Moving forward, I'll be able to bring a lot more value to any project I work on because of all the lessons that I learned, and that is whether I come on as a director or a producer or a writer. Every film project I've worked on has taught me big lessons, not only about filmmaking, but also about myself, among other things. I know now how to manage production timelines better and what's pre-production steps must never be sacrificed because of a tight timeline. And maybe the most important lesson of all from this film was the essence of what good leadership is. Leading by example. I don't think my cast and crew would have been as motivated if they were not seeing that crazy pregnant woman hopping about for hours on end through the night on some days. And I'm saying this because I know how crazy the shoot was. As I wrap this up, I feel a deep sense of gratitude to Nemsio Studios for taking a chance on me, and to Uncle Steve of Natives Filmworks. I mean, he gave me the chance to make my first feature film ever. And without that project, most likely I wouldn't have gotten through to the Netflix projects, and without the Netflix projects, I probably wouldn't have gotten the Nemsia one. I mean, I'm a product of all the awesome people who have taken a chance on me. Having this experience making this film, it has taught me that I am not as strong as I think I am. I have my limits, and at the same time, it's also taught me that I can be as strong as I need to be. I mean, I knew I was resilient, but I was reminded of just how resilient I can be. Need it done? It will be done. Would I advise any pregnant director, would I advise another pregnant director to do the same thing? Honestly, it depends on you and your limits. But then, how would you know your limits if you don't test them? Would I do it again? Yes. But I wouldn't do a few things like sleeping in a car full of mosquitoes or drinking a large cup of coffee at 12 a.m. Maybe I'll drink a smaller cup sharp. But yeah, those are some really ridiculous things I did that I shouldn't have done. Even though, I mean, in my defense, I didn't know the car would be full of mosquitoes. But yeah, I probably should just have slept in a hotel that night. Anyways, I can't wait for you to watch my babies. With difficulty comes ease, which is my second feature film, the one I just made. And It Blooms in June, which is my first feature film and should be coming out this year. Yeah, it feels good to be podcasting again. Happy New Year 2024. And I hope this year brings you amazing things. I hope it brings me amazing things as well.